What's going on, everyone? It is your shaman, your sister in spirit, and your friend Alicia Dunleavy here. And today we are going to be talking about the fall of the patriarchy and the rise of the feminine. And this is actually more of a call to action. The message that I was getting today was really anchored and based in the responsibility of those of us that are spiritual practitioners and magic practitioners, especially when we are using social media as a way to share occult knowledge and hidden knowledge and spiritual knowledge. As I've been sitting in these circles, there has been a lot of discussion about the rise of the dark feminine. And a lot of people can get a little uncertain in terms of what the dark feminine is. And in this particular video, I'm not going to get too much into it, but I am looking forward to discussing it in some future videos. However, what I do want to acknowledge is that the feminine is really associated with the intuition. It is associated with spirituality, whereas the masculine is more associated with logic and like the physical. Okay. Now, because of the language that we speak, when we hear feminine and masculine, we can really get anchored into the concept of male and female, which is something that I want to be able to shift. Okay. And so, how I'm going to address these dualities, because ultimately the masculine and feminine, what we're talking about is the duality of life, which can be eliminated when we get into the oneness, right? But when we are in the 3D realm, we really can focus on the duality, which can be explained as black or white, or masculine and feminine, or yin and yang. And, in cultures, the yin and yang are beautiful because it does eliminate that masculine and feminine dynamic that sometimes we can get really used to attaching an identity to. However, as we move forward, I would love to, or in my work, how I identify these two separate energies are the alpha and the omega. Okay. And the alphas, we really have been living in a society that is really pulling towards an alpha consciousness. Okay. And what's happening is the alpha consciousness has now become hyper alpha and is starting to break itself down, right? Too much movement, which is causing it's causing disease. It's causing, right? It's like acid, it's like acidic and alkaline, right? It's like hyper versus hypo. It's hot versus cold, right? Things can be too much of something, right? So in our society currently, what is happening is this speed in alpha mentality that is now catalyzing a need for balance, a call for balance. And what is the dualistic balance of alpha? It is the omega consciousness, okay, which also calls for regulation. The issue that actually has been repeated throughout history, okay, throughout time, is that we can also get hyper omega as well. And hyper omega, when I'm talking about what I'm bringing today, is the caution to spiritual practitioners to not teeter into or to watch or observe their behaviors as we begin to pull the alpha consciousness back into balance, so that way we can now step into an identity of oneness. Right? When we're in balance, we're a little bit of both, flowing in harmony. And so in hamana, in how I'm showing up today is understanding the dangers, the concerns of sharing hidden occult knowledge, or oversharing, or sharing things that are above certain consciousness on social media, without any sort of understanding of how the 3D world does not support the activations that we are literally activating and forcing on some members of our community. Okay, because we have been in such an alpha mentality, an alpha state for so long, what is going on, right? We're not talking about brainwave lengths, we're talking about consciousness. Because we have been in this hyperactive alpha consciousness for so long, we have built systems that do not consider the omega consciousness, the spirituality, the spiritual depth involved. And as we are sharing content online that can kind of catalyst a kundalini awakening, members of our spiritual family are being forced inside of systems that do not help them regulate their spiritual bodies. First and foremost, this is a responsibility. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, you know? And I really do think that it is important that as we continue to elevate our consciousness and integrate what we are experiencing as spiritual beings, that it is also important for us to know the importance of others, those that are witnessing us, those that are learning from us, that we are not fully responsible, right? Because that would be hyperactive, but that we are partially responsible for the knowledge that is shared. And I completely understand how some people are like, well, they've been hiding information from us that has allowed us to not elevate our own consciousness, which I also understand. I would never ask anybody to, again, keep knowledge from people. However, if we are thinking about it in terms of development, right? We cannot expect a kindergartner to be doing high level math if they haven't learned the basics, right? There is a natural growth, a natural progression. We can't expect a tree to bear fruit when the tree itself is still yet a seed. It doesn't mean that the potential isn't there. The potential is there, right? But how are we as usherers, as gatekeepers, as knowledge keepers, as activators, how are we taking care of the 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D, etc. consciousness? How are we doing that? Are we doing that? And how can we invite more of that into our practice? Ethics, morals, and a deep understanding of development, a deep understanding of responsibility, a deep understanding of love. And again, for me, the real issue, my friends, comes in when there are not systems in place to support the intensities of spiritual psychosis and spiritual imbalances that happen when we activate people and they don't have anywhere to go. They don't have anyone to talk to. They don't have the community set into place in order for us to really begin to help them with the integration process. What about those with pre-existing conditions? What about those with religious trauma? What about those with spiritual trauma? What about those that have been attacked spiritually for years, since infancy, called crazy, institutionalized, medicated? All of these things. And some of you know this. Some of you are watching this are like, yeah, that was me. You know, the long-standing issues of wanting to expedite the swinging back into Omega consciousness. Is that what we want? Do we want to be approaching our earth, our communities, and ultimately ourselves with such radical, this needs to change, with aggression, with such aggressive, with such aggression that we forget that the value in the slow movement, in the container, in the space, in the presence of really being omnipresent, you know? And some of us want to be the leaders. Some of us, I want to be the activator. I want the views. I want the likes. I have the knowledge. I'm being asked to share it. Yes, you are. You absolutely are. And there's a responsibility for that, especially for the newly awakened. Because as elders, right? As elders, how do we do this? How do we be responsible? How do we nurture these newly awakened babies so that they can also continue to usher in a harmony consciousness? It's our love. And I also recognize that as I share this information, right, it's just an opinion. It's just an observation. It is neither right or wrong. So do not allow the words that are coming out of my mouth to sway you either way. If you are being called and you are doing what you are being asked to do, then do it. There are some that are going to have to go into hyper omegaism in order to break down some of the systems. But my question is, do you stay in that? Or is there something within you as well that is also calling you to flow with infinite beingness in order for the true goal to be met? These are all questions for you to answer for yourself. I certainly don't have any answers. I certainly don't do it perfectly. I certainly have made mistakes. I certainly have gone into spiritual psychosis and have learned so many valuable lessons from having to get it through going through it myself. But I also know that there are others that are struggling. I know that there was a time where I almost didn't make it through. And I also know that I help those that cross over. I help cross some over that wish that they could have done it a little differently, that they wish that they knew things, you know, and that they will come back again and that they will learn it. And so that is a part of their process. So again, there's no shaming here. There's no like, and there's just passion, passion and a message. Checking in, understanding that there are wrongs happening here and that there are steps that can be taken in order to prevent further injury, in order to protect the vulnerabilities inside of the spaces. And one of the spaces that really concerns me is the lack of spiritual representation inside of our healthcare system. And I really think that that is a movement that is being called forward. And it is a movement that I stand for. And not only on behalf of those that are my video shut off. But not only am I trying to be an advocate of that for those that are the experiencers of the psychosis, but also the healthcare people that really don't know what to do, that are getting overwhelmed by the amount of spiritual activations that they are approaching, of the amount of spirits that are coming into these spaces, and they don't know what to do, and they don't know how to behave, and they don't know how to protect themselves. It's hard. It's very hard. So a call to action. Check in with yourself for those of you that are activators. Answer questions, create containers, and check in with what is going on for the greatest and highest good of all, including yourself. And I trust you on your path that that you will make mistakes. And I trust on the path that those mistakes are going to help you grow and help you elevate and change and shift. So thank you for being here with me. I appreciate you. This is your shaman, your sister in spirit, and your friend, Alicia Dunleavy here.